I still remember the notification sound that shattered my world. I was in Geneva, reviewing quarterly reports in my hotel room at 11 p.m., when my phone buzzed with a voice message from my granddaughter, Emma. She was only 13 years old. The audio was barely a whisper, broken by static, and what sounded like her teeth chattering. "Grandpa, it's Emma. I'm in the storm cellar at Aunt Patricia's ranch. She locked me in here with Grandmother Beatrice. There's no food, just a bucket of water. I don't know what day it is anymore. Maybe day 7? 8? I'm so cold. The battery's almost dead. Please. I don't know how many more days I can." The message cut off. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial. I'm Malcolm Brennan, 63 years old, and I've spent 40 years as a petroleum engineer managing crisis situations across 3 continents. I've kept my composure through oil rig fires, boardroom battles, and the death of my wife, but nothing prepared me for those 17 words from my granddaughter. I called my daughter-in-law Patricia immediately. No answer. I called my former mother-in-law, Beatrice Ashford. She picked up on the first ring, her voice smooth as silk. "Malcolm, it's nearly midnight in Switzerland. Shouldn't you be sleeping?" "Where's Emma?" I demanded. "I just got a message from her. She says she's locked in your storm cellar." There was a pause. Then Beatrice laughed. It was a sound I'd heard many times during my marriage to her daughter Catherine, usually right before she said something cutting. "Oh, Malcolm, Emma is perfectly fine. She's at a leadership camp in Banff. You know how dramatic teenage girls can be. She probably sent that before she left, trying to get attention. You really should stop indulging her fantasies." Put Patricia on the phone. "Patricia is in Vancouver for a medical conference." "Really, Malcolm, you're being paranoid." "This is exactly why, Catherine." I hung up and called 911, giving them the address of the Ashford Ranch outside Calgary. The operator assured me they'd send someone immediately, but I knew Beatrice. She had connections. Her late husband had been a provincial court judge. Her family had owned half of southern Alberta for 3 generations. She could delay things. I was already booking the next flight out. Geneva to London, London to Calgary, 13 hours minimum. Every minute felt like drowning. The Ashford family never accepted me. When I married their daughter Catherine 28 years ago, I was a field engineer from Newfoundland, the son of a fisherman. Beatrice made sure I knew that the Ashfords didn't marry laborers. She said it at our wedding reception, loud enough for my mother to hear. Catherine was different then. Or maybe I just wanted to believe she was. We had a son, David, and for a while, we were happy. But Beatrice's poison worked slowly. Every family dinner was a reminder that I wasn't good enough. Every promotion I earned was dismissed. When I finally made senior vice president, Beatrice said, "How nice. Though it's not quite the same as actually owning the company, is it?" Catherine filed for divorce when David was 12. She got primary custody. I got every other weekend and the knowledge that my son was being raised to see me as Beatrice saw me. Inferior. David rebelled in his 20s. He married Yuki, a Japanese-Canadian woman he met at university. Beatrice didn't attend the wedding. Neither did Catherine. They said Yuki wasn't appropriate for the family. When Emma was born, they refused to acknowledge her. "That child isn't really an Ashford," Beatrice announced. David and Yuki raised Emma in Toronto, far from Calgary, and the Ashfords' influence. I visited them every month, and Emma became the light of my life. She had Yuki's kind eyes and David's stubborn streak and my love for solving puzzles. Then, 8 months ago, David and Yuki died. Car accident on the 401. Black ice. They were gone in an instant. I was in Houston when I got the call. I flew back immediately, ready to take Emma in. But Patricia, Catherine's younger sister, who I'd barely spoken to in years, filed for custody. She claimed I was too old, traveled too much, and had an unstable lifestyle. She convinced a judge that Emma needed a proper family environment. Beatrice backed her, naturally. Between their lawyers and their connections, they won. Emma moved to the ranch outside Calgary. I got scheduled video calls twice a week and 1 weekend visit per month. Those calls were strange. Emma seemed quiet, subdued. She'd always been bright and talkative, but now she gave short answers. When I asked if she was okay, she'd glance off camera and say yes. 2 weeks ago, she missed our call entirely. Patricia said Emma had the flu. Last week, Emma asked me when I was coming home from Geneva. I told her I'd be back in 3 days. She said, "That might be too late, Grandpa." Then Patricia's voice cut in from the background, telling Emma it was time for bed. The call ended. I should have known. I should have come home right then. Now I was in a taxi from Calgary International Airport to the Ashford Ranch, and it was 4 a.m., and I was watching the dark prairie fly past while my phone sat silent in my lap. The voice message had come 9 hours ago. The 911 dispatcher had promised to send officers. Why hadn't anyone called me back? The ranch house appeared over a hill, a sprawling mansion of stone and timber that had been in the Ashford family for 90 years. 3 police cruisers were parked in the circular driveway, their lights painting the darkness red and blue. An ambulance sat with its back doors open. I was out of the taxi before it fully stopped. A constable tried to intercept me, but I pushed past. That's my granddaughter. Where is she? A detective stepped forward, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes. Mr. Brennan, I'm Detective Sarah Chen. We've been trying to reach you. Where's Emma? She glanced toward the ambulance. The paramedics are with her now. Sir, I need to prepare you. Your granddaughter has been in that storm cellar for 11 days. The world tilted. 11 days? I called 911 9 hours ago. We got here as fast as we could. There were complications. Judge Ashford's widow made some calls. We had to get a warrant, which took time. I'm sorry. 11 days. Emma had been trapped for 11 days while I was in board meetings and hotel rooms, while Patricia told me she had the flu, while Beatrice lied to my face. I ran to the ambulance. Emma was on a stretcher, wrapped in thermal blankets. Her skin was gray. Her lips were cracked and bloody. An IV line ran into her arm. Her eyes were closed, but when I grabbed her hand, they fluttered open. Grandpa? Her voice was barely audible. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here. I knew you'd come. I kept counting. I made marks on the wall with a rock. 11 marks. I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was more. A paramedic was checking her vital signs. Sir, we need to get her to Alberta Children's Hospital. She's severely dehydrated, malnourished, and hypothermic. Her kidneys are stressed. Can I ride with her? Are you family? I'm her grandfather. I'm her legal guardian. I wasn't, but I'd burn that bridge when I came to it. The paramedic nodded. Get in. As they loaded Emma into the ambulance, I looked back at the ranch house. Beatrice stood in the doorway, perfectly composed in a silk robe. Patricia stood beside her, arms crossed. They looked annoyed at the disruption, nothing more. Detective Chen was handcuffing them both. Beatrice was saying something about lawyers and inappropriate arrests. Patricia was silent, staring at the ground. I climbed into the ambulance, and the doors closed, and we were moving, sirens wailing into the prairie dawn. Emma's hand tightened on mine. Grandpa, I need to tell you something. Before I forget, my head's fuzzy. Just rest, sweetheart. We'll talk later. No, need to tell you now, she swallowed, wincing. Aunt Patricia said Grandmother Beatrice, wanted to teach me. About knowing my place. She said I was ungrateful, that I should be thankful they took me in, that girls like me, half-breeds, she called me. We don't deserve Ashford money or the Ashford name. My vision went red. Emma, that's not. She put me in there 9 days before you were supposed to come home. She said if I survived, maybe I'd learned my lesson. She brought water every 2 days. Not food, just water. She made Aunt Patricia watch. Aunt Patricia cried the first time, but then she stopped. She said grandmother was right, that I needed discipline. The paramedic was listening, his face carefully neutral, but I saw his jaw tighten. He'd heard enough custody cases to know evil when he heard it. Did they hurt you? I asked. Did they hit you? Grandmother slapped me. Once. When I talked back about my mom. She said my mom was trash for marrying a Japanese woman. Said it contaminated the bloodline. Emma's eyes welled with tears. Grandpa, I just wanted to go home. I wanted you. I'm here now. And I promise you, Emma, they will never touch you again. At the hospital, doctors swarmed. Emma was admitted to intensive care. Dehydration, malnutrition, mild hypothermia, acute kidney injury, anxiety, and psychological trauma. She'd lost 14 pounds from her already slim frame. She had pressure sores from lying on concrete. She developed a respiratory infection from the damp cellar. But she was alive. I stayed by her bed while she slept. Detective Chen arrived at noon with a notepad and questions. I told her everything. The custody battle, the supervised calls, Emma's strange behavior, Patricia's lies about the flu, Beatrice's dismissal of my concerns. The detective wrote it all down. "We found Emma's marks on the cellar wall," Chen said. 11 scratches, just like she said. We also found a bucket with stagnant water and evidence that someone had been bringing fresh water every couple of days. The door was padlocked from the outside. We had to cut it open. What are they saying? Patricia and Beatrice. Miss Ashford claims she was following her mother's instructions and didn't realize the severity. Mrs. Beatrice Ashford claims it was discipline for Emma's disrespectful behavior and that she intended to release her before you returned. Both deny intent to harm. They locked a 13-year-old in a storm cellar for 11 days without food. In October, in Alberta. What the hell kind of discipline is that? I agree, Mr. Brennan. The Crown prosecutor is reviewing charges. Likely forcible confinement, child endangerment, possibly attempted murder, depending on medical evidence. But I need to be honest with you. The Ashfords have resources. This won't be easy. It wasn't. Beatrice hired Theodore Langford, the best criminal defense attorney in Calgary. Patricia followed her mother's lead. They made bail within 48 hours. Their story evolved. Emma had been acting out, running away, threatening self-harm. They'd put her in the cellar temporarily for her own safety. They'd been monitoring her. They'd planned to let her out before I returned. It was a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. The media got hold of the story. Prominent Calgary family accused of child abuse. Beatrice gave interviews, calm and dignified, talking about the challenges of raising a troubled teen after her son's tragic death. Patricia played the grieving aunt who'd taken in her orphan niece out of love, only to be accused of cruelty. I watched them twist the narrative, and I realized something. They thought they'd win. They'd won every other battle. Why not this one? I hired my own lawyer, not for the criminal case, but for custody. Emma was still technically under Patricia's guardianship. I filed an emergency motion. The Ashfords fought it. They claimed I was vindictive, using false accusations to steal Emma away. They said Emma had been brainwashed against them during her hospital stay. The hearing was brutal. Beatrice testified that I'd always been a negligent father, that I'd abandoned my own son, that I was too old and too focused on work to raise a teenage girl. Patricia cried on the stand, saying she loved Emma and only wanted what was best. Then Emma testified. The judge allowed her to give testimony via video link from a private room. I watched on a monitor as my granddaughter, pale and thin and wearing a hospital bracelet, told her story. She didn't cry. She didn't exaggerate. She just stated facts. My Aunt Patricia locked me in the cellar on October 14th. My grandmother Beatrice told her to. They said I was ungrateful and disrespectful and that I needed to learn my place. Grandmother brought me water every 2 days. No food. She said food was a privilege. She said girls like me, with Japanese blood, we were lucky the family took us in at all. She said if I told anyone, she'd make sure my grandfather never saw me again. She said he was beneath us anyway, a laborer. That's what she called him. The judge awarded me emergency custody on the spot. Emma was released into my care 3 weeks after I'd received that voice message. But I wasn't done. I'd spent 40 years building relationships in the oil industry. I knew people, geologists, engineers, lawyers, executives, politicians. I called in every favor. I hired a private investigator, a former RCMP officer named Douglas Mercer, who specialized in digging up the kind of dirt people thought they'd buried. Doug found things. Lots of things. Beatrice's late husband, Judge Ernest Ashford, had a history of biased rulings. Doug uncovered case after case where Judge Ashford had ruled against Indigenous defendants, Asian immigrants, and anyone who didn't fit his definition of respectable. There were complaints filed over the years, all dismissed or buried. Doug also found that Beatrice had been involved. She'd made calls, used connections, helped cover up her husband's prejudice. More damning. Patricia had a history too. She'd been fired from her position as a school counselor 8 years earlier for making racially insensitive comments to students. The school board had kept it quiet, giving her a severance package in exchange for her silence. Doug got copies of the complaints. One was from a Filipino student who said Patricia told her to stop playing the race card and work harder like normal Canadians. I compiled everything. I sent it to the Crown prosecutor, to journalists, to advocacy groups. I made sure the world knew exactly who the Ashfords were. The criminal trial began in March, 5 months after Emma's rescue. The Crown charged both women with forcible confinement, child endangerment, and assault. The evidence was overwhelming. Emma's testimony, the cellar itself, medical records, the padlock, the scratch marks on the wall. The defense tried to paint Emma as a troubled teen, and me as a manipulative grandfather coaching her story. But Emma was strong. She sat in that witness box and answered every question with calm clarity. When Theodore Langford tried to suggest she'd exaggerated her ordeal, she looked him in the eye and said, "Sir, I made 11 marks on that wall, one for each day. Would you like to see the photos?" The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all counts. Beatrice was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Patricia got 6 years. Both were also convicted in civil court after I sued them for damages and emotional distress. I won a judgment for $4.2 million. I donated every penny to organizations that support children of mixed-race families and victims of elder abuse. But I wasn't finished. I went after the Ashford legacy itself. The family had donated millions to various institutions over the decades. Scholarships, buildings, endowments, all carried the Ashford name. I contacted every institution with evidence of Ernest and Beatrice's racism. I showed them case files, complaints, and witness statements. I made the argument that honoring the Ashford name was honoring bigotry. The University of Calgary was first. They renamed the Ashford School of Business to the Legacy Scholars Building with a new mandate focusing on diversity and inclusion. The Calgary General Hospital removed Beatrice Ashford's name from their pediatric wing and rededicated it to Emma's parents, David and Yuki Brennan. The local Arts Foundation dissolved the Ashford Fellowship and created new awards for Indigenous and immigrant artists. One by one, the Ashford name was erased from the institutions they'd tried to control. Their legacy became a cautionary tale instead of a point of pride. The ranch was seized as part of the criminal restitution. It was sold at auction. I bought it through a shell company and donated it to a nonprofit that runs a camp for at-risk youth. Emma helped design the program. Throughout this, Emma healed. It wasn't fast, and it wasn't easy. She had nightmares. She was afraid of closed spaces. She struggled with trust. We found her an excellent therapist, Dr. Nina Okafor, who specialized in childhood trauma. Emma saw her twice a week for 2 years. Emma also reconnected with her mother's family in Japan. Yuki's parents flew to Calgary to meet their granddaughter. They'd been kept away by the Ashfords during the custody battle, told they weren't wanted. Now Emma video chatted with them every Sunday. She spent a summer in Osaka learning about her heritage. I adjusted my work schedule. I took fewer international trips. When I did travel, Emma came with me. We turned my work into our adventure. She sat in on meetings when appropriate, learning about engineering and business. She was brilliant, just like her father. 4 years after her rescue, Emma graduated from high school with honors. She was accepted to the University of British Columbia, where she planned to study social work. At her graduation ceremony, she gave a speech. 4 years ago, I was locked in a cellar by people who believed I was less than human because of my mixed heritage. They thought they could break me, that they could teach me to hate myself. Instead, they taught me something else. The power of one person who refuses to give up. My grandfather crossed an ocean to save me. He spent years fighting to make sure what happened to me never happens to another child. He showed me that love is stronger than hate, that persistence defeats prejudice, and that family isn't about blood or legacy. It's about who shows up when you need them most. I was in the front row, crying like a fool. She'd turned out better than I ever imagined. Later, at her graduation party, Emma pulled me aside. "Grandpa, I want to tell you something. I forgave Aunt Patricia. I was surprised." "You did?" Dr. Okafor and I worked on it. I'm not saying what she did was okay. It wasn't, but holding on to anger was hurting me, not her. Patricia wrote me letters from prison. She apologized. She said grandmother had controlled her whole life, and she was too weak to stand up. She said watching me suffer broke something in her, and she'll spend the rest of her life trying to be better. I don't know if I believe her completely, but I'm choosing to let go of the hate. What about Beatrice? Emma's expression hardened. No, some people don't deserve forgiveness. Grandmother never apologized. She still thinks she was right. I hope she rots in that cell. I hugged my granddaughter, proud of her wisdom. She'd found a balance I wasn't sure I could have achieved. She'd learned to distinguish between someone who made terrible choices out of weakness and someone who was fundamentally rotten. Patricia was released after 4 years for good behavior. She moved to Edmonton and started working with a restorative justice program, helping other families navigate trauma. She sends Emma cards on her birthday. Emma reads them but doesn't respond. Maybe someday she will. Maybe not. It's her choice. Beatrice will be eligible for parole next year. She'll be 82. I've already written a letter to the parole board. So has Emma. So have 3 advocacy groups and 2 journalists who covered the case. Beatrice Ashford will stay in prison until she's served every day of her sentence. Now, at 67, I've finally retired. Emma is in her 2nd year at UBC, thriving. She volunteers at a crisis hotline for youth. She wants to open a shelter for kids from abusive homes someday. I'm helping her write grant proposals. Last month, we drove out to the ranch, now called Horizon Hope Camp. We watched kids Emma's age, kids from foster care, kids who'd been abused, kids who'd been told they weren't good enough, laughing and playing sports, and learning they mattered. Do you ever regret it? Emma asked. All the time you spent fighting? You could have just moved on? I thought about that. Emma, I could have moved on. I could have taken you somewhere far away and tried to forget. But then the Ashfords would still be out there, still hurting people, still teaching their poison to the next generation. Some battles you don't fight just for yourself. You fight them so the next person doesn't have to. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I'm glad you fought, Grandpa. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. I learned 3 things through this ordeal. First, evil often wears a respectable face. Beatrice Ashford looked like someone's kindly grandmother. She had wealth, status, and community respect. But underneath, she was a monster who'd torture a child to protect her bigoted worldview. Never judge cruelty by its packaging. Second, institutions and legacies can be dismantled. The Ashfords thought their name would last forever, but reputation is built on actions, and when those actions are exposed, everything crumbles. No family is too powerful to fall if enough people stand against them. Third, and most importantly, healing is possible. Emma could have been destroyed by what happened to her. Instead, with support, therapy, and love, she became stronger. She took her trauma and turned it into purpose. That's not to say everyone can or should do the same. Healing looks different for everyone, but it's possible. Don't let anyone tell you that broken things can't be made whole again. If you're reading this and you've faced abuse, especially from family, know this. It's not your fault. It doesn't matter what they say, what excuses they make, or how they try to justify it. Abuse is never deserved. You are not the problem. And if you're in a position to help someone being abused, don't wait. Don't assume someone else will handle it. Don't believe the polished exterior of respectable families. Trust your instincts. Make the call. Be the person who shows up, because sometimes all that stands between a child and disaster is one person who refuses to look away. I'm Malcolm Brennan. I'm Emma's grandfather, and I do it all again without hesitation.